Dr. Drew is kind enough to join us this morning. Good morning, Dr. Drew.
Good morning. How are you?
Hey, Dr. Drew. Doing really, really well. Wanted to give you a boob update. Still nippleless, but healing beautifully. Thank you.
Well, it was beautifully healed last time I observed.
Yes.
Beheld. And did the radiation do anything, or is that?
I'm doing it as we speak. I've got another 4 weeks, another month of it, and I'm doing extremely well. I'm
Great.
My skin is not even bothered, and no problem whatsoever. So
Great.
I'm thankful. Although I was reading that some radiation can give you cancer, and I'm like, I don't need to read this right now. It's like,
yeah, I mean, any of these things that we use to cure cancer have a downside, but
Yeah.
Its risk is way less than the risk
yes.
of not doing anything. So
that's what they said. All right. Well, we've been talking to you about the subject for a long time. You have been talking about it on your own for quite some time, and it seems like everything that you had said was going to happen has happened. The latest on this, Gil Garcetti. Not
Eric
Gil.
Garcetti.
Eric. Oh, my God. His dad is Gil.
Gil's the one that screwed OJ up.
Okay.
Nice.
Eric Garcetti is leading an anti-homelessness coalition. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, his rhetoric has been what I have been complaining about, which is that he has refused categorically and weirdly to address the homeless mental health issue, which just yesterday President Trump suddenly began talking about. And he talked about it in a manner that I was greatly relieved to hear, which was, of course, this is a mental health crisis. These people don't know that they are living in these horrible circumstances necessarily, or they are so addicted that the addiction and the distorted priorities keep them in the streets, and we have to do something about this. Now, there have been a few proposals, as you said. Mayor Garcetti is attempting to, I think he's going to testify in Congress coming up. There is a legislation called the Fighting Homelessness Through Services and Housing Act. So finally, the word services is at least entering into the conversation. Prior to today, you would never hear him utter any words about services, only housing. And the unfortunate reality, which I've been chanting about for a year and a half, is that housing will not solve this problem. Of course, we need some housing, but we need psychiatric hospital beds, we need hold beds, and we need the ability to put people in them. And the only way that's going to come about is if we adjust the criteria of gravely disabled as defined by the Landrum-Petris Act. Now, John Murlock is working very hard on that in the state Senate, but he has been sidelined for the next year to 2 years in terms of being actively heard by the state Senate. So until Prop 47 is adjusted, which is going to come up on the next 2020 ballot, and until we adjust criteria for gravely disabled, all the money in the world isn't going to solve this problem. Because when you can't urge people into treatment, they ain't going when they have these kinds of illnesses.
This is what drives me absolutely crazy about this subject. If you take California out of the equation, the number of homeless people nationwide goes down. This is not a federal problem. This is a California liberal Democrat created problem.
Correct.
Because of Prop 47. Prop
Washington
57,
same thing. Yep.
AB 109, the fact that they won't change the conservatorship laws, the fact that
they're
they
working
insist
on
it's a housing issue.
Yep.
These are the problems that created what we have on our streets today. They're not dealing with this in Albuquerque. They're not dealing with this in San Antonio. They're not dealing with this in other cities. It's Santa Monica. It's Los Angeles. It's Anaheim. It's San Francisco, Sacramento.
Let me pile on. Here's a piece of evidence that tells you that Los Angeles maybe has less of a housing problem than every other city in the country. We just, in the last 24 months, absorbed about 700,000 to 800,000 undocumented immigrants, and they're not on the street. They found housing. Now, either they pushed citizens out onto the street, which is a conclusion I'm not prepared to make, or they GD found housing. And so all this housing rhetoric is a hoax. It's a hoax, and it needs to stop.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the mental health and addiction reality.
Yeah.
And by the way, people keep asking me, and by the way, what are you going to do about the rats, Mayor? Until you have a plan for the rats, the infectious disease problem is going to continue to loom over our heads.
And they spend a lot of money. They just got Measure H, Measure Triple H, and the homeless numbers went up. What's to say that the homeless numbers will go down if they get more money from Washington?
Mm-hmm.
They won't until you handle these problems of being able to put people into these, again, not against their will, but a way to motivate them into treatment. Like, hey, we're going to either arrest you or you're going to go to the housing.
That's
you can't
it.
do that now. Now you can't say anything. Oh, your bag of feces is your belongings? Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
It's crazy. It's a crazy health epidemic, and it's affecting not just city workers. It's affecting a lot of people. Now, I have a question for you. So let's say we have money and we build facilities for them. They either get arrested or they agree to go to.
No. Now you got to go. You got to go up to them and go. Here are the keys to your apartment. That's it. That's
but I'm saying, can we make a new law that you will get arrested?
Yes, we can make lots of new laws, but it's going to take some time to do that.
But at that point, what if we have the bubonic plague by that time? And my other question is,
that is my concern, and that's why I have been raising the alarm bells, because then I have made some inroads where I could potentially call on the federal government to bring FEMA in. Now, I don't know if they listen to me, but the people I'm talking to lead me to believe that that's a lever that could get pulled. And that's it. That's what we got to do. Then it's an emergency, and then people are going to be moved whether they like it or not. And that's, if that starts to happen, that'd be a terrible day for the homeless and the community at large. And so until they start dealing with this actually compassionately, rather than this pseudo-false compassion that they seem to maintain, which is, think about this. Just think about this. Here's another. I'm just piling on the evidence of how deeply disturbed these policies are. If you look at the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is true statistically, it says there very clearly that if you go untreated with addiction, there are only three potential outcomes: institutionalization, prison, or death. Mm-hmm. We have taken away prison or institutionalization. Therefore, you are committing these people to die.
Death. Mm-hmm.
You are committing a passive form of manslaughter. Is that compassion? That's compassionate? To commit people to die. That is the most insane position I can imagine as a physician.
Your argument is spot on. And you know a lot about addiction and where it leads. And so I wish, I hope, I pray something. I mean, we used to shut down the big institutions, right? Because there was...
No, what happened was there's a book called American Psychosis that chronicles this, if you're interested.
Yeah.
What happened was there was a guy named Robert Felix, who was a psychiatrist that believed that chronic mental illness didn't exist. Oh. Therefore, he believed a ridiculous philosophy that state mental hospitals created mental illness. So he coerced President Kennedy to sign the Community Mental Health Act in 1963, which was designed to strangle the state hospitals and create community mental health centers to, quote, prevent mental illness, something that they did not know how to do then, we still don't know how to do now. They were abject failures. People were belched out of the state mental hospitals, no discharge plan because they weren't sick, and no follow-up plan. They went to the prisons, the nursing homes, and the streets. And state by state, every state mental hospital was strangled financially. Another move was they prevented chronic mental health beds from being covered by Medicare and Medi-Cal, which is something to this day, though there are waivers for that and ways around it that we must get at. And the community mental health centers were a joke. And in the 1980s, President Reagan finally closed those. Then historically, that went down as, oh, my God, Reagan closed the state hospitals. That is not what happened. He closed the community mental health centers, which were ridiculous waste of money and a total abject failure. In the meantime, all these hundreds of thousands of people spilled into the streets, the prisons, and the nursing homes with no plan for the newly diagnosed, and thus we have our problem.
All right. I'm sure you'll have more on this later on today at noon. Dr. Drew, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Love how worked up you get on this.
Yeah, well, I hope something gets done about it. Thank you so much, Dr.
Okay,
Drew.
guys. See ya. Bye.